Hi everyone, and we are back today and we're returning to a oldie but a goodie. We're heading back to Constantine P. Cavafy. Woo! Now, now the reason I'm doing this is as we're heading closer to the summer and Pride Month, I thought we could read some of Cavafy's homosexual based poetry. Now, Cavafy, we presume he's gay, but at the same time, since so much of his poetry was based around Greek and Arabic stylings, and both Greek poetry, especially lyric, where we have examples like Sappho, we do have like a tradition of that styling being used for homoerotic purposes. As for Arabic, they have a similar story. A lot of Arabic poetry does have homoerotic pretenses. Sometimes that is to, in general, describe passion and attraction. Sometimes it's about unrequited love. Sometimes it even has some religious connotations to it when it comes to traditions and history of Islam. Now, this isn't to say that Constantine wasn't. He probably was. He probably was gay, but he himself was such a hermit that it's kind of hard to tell since he never really said it in his own words. We really do just have a lot to go on based on his poetry, his description of passion, his passing fancies, if in other words. So, to begin with, we have desires. Desires like the beautiful bodies of those who died young, tearfully interred in grand mausoleums, with roses by their heads and jasmine at their feet. So seem those desires that have passed without fulfillment, without a single night of pleasure or one of its radiant mornings. Ideal voices, the beloved voices of those who have died or those who are lost to us, as if they were dead. Sometimes they speak to us in dreams, sometimes. In thought, the mind hears them, and with their sounds for a moment return, sounds from our life's first poetry, like music at night far off and fading out. In these dark rooms where I pass such listless days, I wander up and down looking for the windows. When a window opens, there will be some relief, but there are no windows, or at least I cannot find them, and perhaps it is just as well. Perhaps the light would prove another torment. Who knows what new things it would reveal? Very seldom. An old man stooped and spent, crippled by the years and by excess. Walks slowly across the alley, but as he enters his house to hide his wretched state and his old age, he muses on that share of youth he still claims. Young boys today recite his verses, his fancies that pass across their waking eyes. Their healthy, sensuous minds, their muscular, smooth limbs, are stirred by his vision of beauty. The cafe's entrance. Something they said beside me turned my attention towards the cafe entrance. There I saw a beautiful body. That Eros must have fashioned with his boundless skill, designing with delight the symmetrical limbs, molding the tall sculpted frame, tenderly drawing the face, and bestowing with a touch of his hand a feeling on the brow, in the eyes, and on the lips. One night, the room was shabby and miserable, tucked above a suspect tavern. A window opened onto the alley, narrow and unclean. From the tavern beneath came the voices of workmen playing cards and carousing. There in the humble, commonplace bed, I possessed but the body of love. I possessed the sensual rose-red lips of intoxication. Red lips so intoxicating that even now, as I write these lines after so many years, all alone in this house, I am drunk with it again. Return. Return often and take me, beloved sensation. Return and take me, when the body's memories awaken, and old longing pulse again in my blood. When lips and skin remember, and hands almost touch again. Return often and take me at night, when lips and skin remember. Far away. I would like to speak of this memory, but it has grown dim, as if no trace of it remains, for it lies far off in the first years of my youth. Skin as if made of jasmine. An August evening, was it August? I barely recall the eyes now. They were blue, I think. Ah, yes, blue, a sapphire blue. I have gazed so much. I have gazed so much on beauty that my eyes overflow with it. The body's curves, red lips, voluptuous limbs, hair as if taken from a Greek statue, always lovely even if uncombed, tumbling lightly over the snowy brow, the dramatis persona of love that my poetry demanded in the nights of my youth, encountered secretly in those nights in the street. His face appealing, a little wan, his languid eyes a chestnut color. 25 years old, but seeming 20, with an artist's sense for clothing. The color, the tie, the collar shape, aimlessly wandering the street as if still dazed from the illicit passion. The quite illicit passion he has just enjoyed. The tobacconist window. Near the brightly lit window of a tobacconist shop, they stood amid a crowd of people. By chance their gaze met, and hesitantly they half expressed the illicit longing of their flesh. Later, after several anxious steps along the pavement, they smiled gently nodded. Then the closed carriage, the sensuous mingling of their bodies, the hands, the lips coming together. Gray. Gazing upon a half-gray opal, I suddenly recalled two beautiful gray eyes I'd once seen. It must have been 20 years ago. We were lovers for a month, then he left to Smyrna, I think, looking for work, and we never saw each other again. Their beauty must have dimmed by now, if he's even alive. Those gray eyes, that beautiful face has surely gone to ruin. Memory keep those eyes just as they were, and memory, whatever you can salvage of that patch of mine, whatever you can bring back to me tonight. The next table. He can't be more than 22, and yet I'm certain it was at least that many years ago that I enjoyed the very same body. This isn't some erotic fantasy. I only just come into the casino, and there hasn't been time enough to drink. I tell you that the very same body I once enjoyed, and if I can't recall precisely where, that means nothing. Now that he's sitting there at the next table, I recognize each of his movements, and beneath his clothes I see those beloved naked limbs again. In despair. He lost him for good, and now on the lips of each new lover, he seeks the lips of the one he lost. In every embrace with each new lover, he tries to believe that he's giving himself to the same young man. He lost him for good, as if he never existed. The boy wished, so he said, he wished to be freed from the stigma reproach of that unhealthy pleasure, from the stigma reproach of that shameful pleasure. It wasn't too late, he said, for him to break free. He lost him for good, as if they never existed. Though imagination and self-delusion, he seeks those lips on the lips of others. He's trying to feel that lost love again, before time could change them. They wept horribly at the separation. Neither had wished it. It was circumstance, the need to earn a living, where one or the other was obliged to go far away, New York or Canada. Yet at that point their love was no longer what had been. Their old attraction has diminished by degrees. Their old attraction has diminished a good deal. But neither desired to be split apart. It was circumstance, surely, or perhaps destiny itself, was working now as an artist separating them at that point. When their passion subsided before time could change them, and each to the other would remain always as he was, a handsome young man of 24. He came to read. He came to read 2 or 3 books are lying open, history and poetry. But after just 10 minutes of reading, he lets them drop there on the sofa. He falls asleep. He truly is devoted to reading, but he's 23 years old and very handsome. And just this afternoon, arrows surged within his perfect limbs and on his lips. Into his beautiful flesh came the heat of passion, and there was no foolish embarrassment about the form that pleasure took. In the 25 years of his life, he goes nightly to the saloon where they met the month before. He made inquiries, but they could tell him nothing. From what little they said, he knew he'd met up with an entirely unknown subject, one of the many suspicious, shadowy young forms who frequented that spot. Yet he goes to the tavern every night, and sits there watching the entrance, doggedly watching the entrance. Perhaps he'll come, perhaps tonight he'll come. For 3 weeks he repeats the ritual. His mind grows sick with lust. Kisses linger on his lips. Every inch of his flesh is racked by longing. He feels that body's touch all over. He longs to embrace him again. He tries, of course, not to betray his emotions. But sometimes he is almost beyond caring. Besides, he is well aware of the risk. He made up his mind. It's not improbable that this life he leads will expose him to some ruinous scandal. Days of 1896. He is utterly disgraced, an erotic proclivity quite forbidden and widely condemned. Yet congenital, nonetheless, was the cause for public opinion. Was terrible prudish, bit by bit he was deprived of the little income he had. Then came a loss in status, and the respect he once commanded. He was nearing 30, but had never gone a year in full employment, or at least a job he could talk about. At times he earned some semblance of livelihood by brokering meetings considered shameful. He ended up with one of those, if you were seen with him often enough, you could be terribly compromised. But no, that will not do. This picture isn't right. The memory of his beauty deserves better than this. There is another point of view, and seen from that angle, he is quite appealing, a simple and true child of Eros, who without hesitation placed far above his honor and reputation the pure pleasure that his pure flesh could give, above his own reputation, but public opinion, which was so terribly prudish, so often got wrong. 2 young men, 23 to 24 years old. He'd been sitting at the cafe since 10:30, expecting him to appear at any moment. Midnight came and went, and he still waited. Soon it would be 1:30. The cafe was almost completely empty. He grew tired of reading the newspapers mechanically. Of his original 3 shillings, only one remained. While waiting there, he spent the rest on coffee and brandy. He smoked all his cigarettes. The waiting has exhausted him. Alone all those hours, insidious thoughts began to rankle about the wayward life he led. But when he saw his friend arrive, at once the fatigue, the boredom, and the dark thoughts all vanished. His friend brought unexpected good news. He won £60 playing cards. Their handsome faces, their buoyant youth, the sensuous love they both shared, were refreshed, had come alive, and were fortified by those £60 won at cards. Now full of joy and strength, sensuous and beauty, they departed not to the homes of their respectable families, where after all they were no longer welcome, but to a place known only to them, a special establishment of vice where they requested a room with a bed, expensive cocktails, and started to drink again. When the drinks ran dry and was nearing 4 in the morning, they gave themselves happy at last to love.